Change isn't just coming, it's already here. This is Ask for Change podcast, hosted by leadership expert Meridith Elliott Powell. Brings you weekly conversations with leaders and experts who are redefining success in a world of disruption. Let's begin today's journey and turn uncertainty into your competitive advantage.
Let's turn uncertainty into your competitive advantage. There is so much stress going on in the marketplace. My guest today and we were just talking about the government shutdown and how that's impacting flights. And on this show, we always talk about the tools and the strategies you need to really turn uncertainty into competitive advantage. But today, I feel like we've taken a little bit of a turn that's going to be a unique, innovative, and very different type of show. It's a piece of change that we don't really think about. And that is really, I think, the topic today has a lot to do with what you do to navigate and take care of yourself so that you can get through all of this change and still feel good, still feel healthy, and actually maybe be a little bit excited about it. So welcome to the show. And I am super excited about our guest today. She is a personal friend, Hall of Fame speaker, a leadership generational expert, and she has a brand new book out that we're going to focus on today. Welcome to the show, Anna Liotta.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here with you.
Well, listen, I want to dive in immediately, really talking about this, but that was my introduction of you. I always like to start off, how do you describe yourself to an audience? How do you talk about, your experience and the expertise you bring to the world?
Oh, thank you. So I love to share with people that I kind of work in the intersection between generational codes and neuro modes, and how the understanding of the two can help us be better in every aspect of our life, not only professionally, but personally as parents and as partners.
I love that. So neuro modes, that's not a term you hear very often. And I'm really familiar with your work in generational codes and really unlocking those codes and helping people understand. I'll use your terminology there but you come out with this brand new book called Vagus Nerve Reset Decoded. I am so fascinated. First of all, I think we need to define the vagus nerve because I don't think that's a term that we hear all over the place. So I want you to define that. And then I want you to talk a little bit about why this book, like what took you down this avenue?
Okay, excellent. So we'll start with the definition, as you said, vagus nerve. So the vagus nerve is the longest nerve in your body. It runs from your brainstem all the way down, touches every single one of your organs, and then it branches out and it touches all over your face and all over your body, and it communicates back to your brain how things are. It's a situation rep, right? It's like, okay, here's what's going on. And 80% of the communication is coming from the body up to the brain. So when we go into fight or flight, when we go into freeze or fawn, those are those nervous system modes, we need to be able to tell the brain if it's real or not. And a lot of us, when we get into business or we get into a tough situation, have automatic survival strategies that kick in. Mm-hmm. And it tells our brain, crazy. And the brain starts to go into tension, or it starts to go into hypervigilance, or it starts to go into like being cautious. And that's not necessarily good in the times of uncertainty when we really need to be able to consciously calm our nervous system. So the reason I went into writing this book for the individual leader, for the entrepreneur, for the senior leader, for the parent, about how do you understand your own vagus nerve and how to calm your own nervous system, is because the best thing a leader can do to be more effective, whether it's personal or professional, is learn how to regulate their nervous system first. Because when you come in calm, you create a calm for the other person. They don't even necessarily know why, but they feel good being in your space because they're like, oh, I can breathe easier around this person. Oh, for some reason, I believe what they're saying more because it is consistent across their whole biology. And so I've been working with leaders who were really struggling as our younger generations, our Gen Zs and our millennials too, came into the workplace with more fluency around their emotional language than had previously been expected for Gen Xers and baby boomers.
Yeah.
was a cause of frustration. Like they expect so much. But what I shared with them is their superpower is to be able to regulate their nervous system such that whoever they're working with feels seen, feels heard, and feels appreciated, and safety is present.
It's really interesting work because I feel like it's so backwards from what society is telling us today. I mean, everything, when you think about social media, when you think about, when you think about even just watching the news, everything seems to be so me focused, right? It doesn't seem to be focused on making sure that people are seen, heard, and valued. And I think so much of our anxiety around uncertainty comes from feeling that we need an answer or we need a control. The very first things that you cannot have in the face of uncertainty is nobody has an answer. Nobody knows exactly what to do right now. And nobody has any level of control. And that creates a level of anxiety. So a question I've got is that when we were doing our research on uncertainty and its impact on business today, we found that we cut it up via generations. We wanted to see how it impacted the generations. And the generations that had the most anxiety around uncertainty were older millennials. And when you think about it, it makes a lot of sense because they're the ones slated to go into the C-suite right now.
They're holding the bag right there.
Yeah. The boomers have kind of said, here you go. Here's the keys. Good luck. We're out of here,
Exactly.
And they feel the most, unprepared. And so where do you even start? Like, so here you are. And I mean, the thing about your vagus nerve is that the moment you don't calm it and everything takes over, you have no ability to see easily, clearly, or correctly. I mean, it is your ability to calm yourself down. You're almost blind to it, right?
Yes, exactly. And, it's so insightful, the research that you're sharing about older millennials being in that really tough spot. Because one of the things is that Gen Xers during their formative years, when they were putting together their generational code, actually had quite a bit of uncertainty. So now they're kind of hard scrabble. They're kind of like, you know what? This feels familiar. So they've had a longer time to deal with that uncertainty. And they're really spending their time making sure their Gen Z kids are the ones that they're helping out. We can talk about that too. But it is perfect that because our millennials, as they came through their formative experiences, had a lot of support from the surrounding people, from their parents, from their coaches, from their BFFs. There was a lot of resourcing of our millennials. And so now being in the position where they are the ones to resource everyone else while everything is changing so rapidly. And I think that's one of the things we cannot understate is how rapidly things are changing and going to change, whether it's AI, whether it's, politics, whatever it is, global politics, all of these things are changing so rapidly. And so our nervous system's ability to stay up with it and to stay calm becomes incredibly important. And so when, as leaders, we learn how to regulate our nervous system so that we are not at the effect of the speed happening around us, not at the effect of the uncertainty, but in the face of it, we're the calm in the storm. We're the ones that can say, okay, I'm coming back into doing some calming breaths before I go into that sales call. I'm doing some calming breaths before I go into that really important merger conversation. And it can be as easy as taking in one breath and letting out two long ones. That tells the vagus nerve, I am not being chased by a tiger right now.
Calm down.
Calm down. And that's what I talk about in the book a lot, is that you give consistent signals to your nerve that you are okay in many different ways, from breath, from touch, from sound. There's many different ways that you can do that, but we don't typically do it when we are in survival. And we need to be able to pause, notice, and choose if we are literally operating in survival right now.
I thought one of the most interesting things that I was taking from the book was the fact that how much control you really do have. I mean, that it's like you think about, I think about like any time I've gotten like ridiculously angry, like I've lost my, I've made a scene. And, and you never feel good about it, right? But you're so angry in the moment, you cannot stop yourself from doing it, right? And so that's what I'm saying. You have no level of awareness. And you typically think of that, of thinking, I didn't have any ability to stop that. And the truth is, you absolutely positively do. But is the vagus nerve, do I need to routinely do this, whether I'm feeling fight or flight or
Yes.
anxiety? Is this just kind of like I eat well and I exercise, drink my water? Is it that as well?
It is that as well. And I want to say, while you're speaking, the words I heard is blind rage. There's a reason people call it blind rage, right?
Right.
You're not seeing either side. You are tunnel vision now, and you are in absolute fight or flight.
Yeah.
And so, yes, this is something that you need to practice when you're not in the urgent moment, such that right before you go into an urgent moment, your nervous system has already been trained. It is okay to relax here. We don't have to go into that overdrive. And you also, we talk about this in the book, have trained your vagal tone. A lot of us that have been overperforming and overproducing and really just hard charging workers for a long time don't have a lot of what's called good vagal tone. And that's that big long nerve kind of hardening. It doesn't easily move. It's like stretching as a metaphor. Like if you have not stretched your muscle and then you just try to go out and run a marathon, you might hurt something, trying to do that. So when you practice, when you're not in the middle of an emergency, you're basically toning up that muscle and giving it the permission to go back and forth. Because we're not trying to always be calm or never get angry. What we're trying to do is have flexibility when any of that happens and being able to go back and forth between it.
Yeah. So other than breathing, what are some of the things that we can do to start to get our vagus nerve in shape?
Okay, so one of my favorite ones is a very simple one that you can actually do while on the phone with somebody or in a meeting with somebody. And it's take your first and second finger, your index and your middle finger, and you go ahead and you put them up to the side of your ear on either side, kind of in a little V.
Okay.
And why we're doing this is because there's a lot of branches of the vagus nerve that starts at the base of the skull, but then it branches off into little small. And while you're doing this, you're massaging those branches and you're saying to them, it's okay to settle down. So you can be looking at somebody like, that's really fascinating, which you're really saying you're getting on my very last nerve.
Yeah.
And so that is a signal that tells your vagus nerve it's okay to down regulate, to calm down. Something just that simple. Now, the other thing that you can do, because there's a lot of good message, and that feels good. Now I have to do it on the other side because I feel unbalanced. Now, the other thing you can do is you can take a finger on each side of your nose, right on your cheekbone, and rub in a circle. That's another vagus nerve point that you can do. The other thing that we have accessible to us at all times, and this is something that Navy SEALs do. Now, if Navy SEALs do this, then it's probably pretty good. Like when they're in an operation, this is what they do. It's called prolax breathing. It's 2 inhales sharp in and then 1 long exhale out. And just using your breath in that way tells your vagus nerve it's okay to down regulate. The other thing that you can do is simply called pause, or not pause, notice, choose, although that's good too. See, hear, feel. So you can do this while you're driving.
Yeah.
How many of us have a little tension while driving?
Just a little.
Just a little. I sat on a board of trustees once for a university that was all about social justice. And we were getting together to kind of get to know each other for the first time. And every single trustee in that room had road rage. And we were like, whoa, here we are about humanism and all that. No, all of us have road rage.
No.
So here's what you can do. You can say out loud, see, and you look around and you see what you see. Maybe you see a car. And you just notice that you see that car. And then you say, hear, and you listen for what you've been hearing but didn't notice you were hearing. Maybe you hear a honk. Maybe you hear the wind. And then you say, feel, and you feel what's underneath you, like the seat underneath you or the steering wheel underneath you. And you go through your senses, because when we are in a state of emergency fight or flight, you know what closes down? Our senses and that ability to really be with the world around us, because now we're in that tunnel vision of like, what is absolutely going to eat me alive? And so while you're driving, just even saying, see, hear, feel, and just doing that for 30 seconds can bring you back into the moment and bring your nervous system back online into rest and digest.
What are some people like? I think about people that I know in my life, and like I even think about the fact that we're recording this at the time when we're all going to head home to for the holidays, and that has to be probably one of the most constant.
Everyone needs this book before the holidays.
They really do, because you sit there and you go there with the best intention. Nobody's going to get under your skin, and then you're halfway through the first piece of pumpkin pie and you lose it, and then there's a fight at the table. So I can imagine things like alcohol are not good for to rest to get the vagus nerve back online. Eating the wrong things or not. Like where does nutrition or having yourself in a good state of health play into that?
It's massively important. Being hydrated enough is a simple one for the holidays, making sure you're drinking enough water, because your vagus nerve and all of those things are operating with communication, and you need that kind of hydration so that all of that communication can be flowing through the blood and through the nerves as well. So that's one of the first things that we stop doing, is we stop inputting the good things when we go into that state of hypervigilance. The other thing is rest. I
Yeah.
cannot say enough. If you are under resourced, and that's what I'm talking about right now, is actually resourcing yourself. If you are in a place where you feel like the demands around you, with family and otherwise, exceed the resources that you have available, you are immediately into reactivity. And that extra glass of wine is not going to slow down that reactivity. That glass of wine is going to ramp up the reactivity. It's not bringing, people will say taking the edge off, but what it's really doing is bringing down the barriers around some of the reactivity that's been there underneath the surface. So resourcing yourself, enough sleep, enough water, and also enough time that you spend before you get into interactions, where you actually spend just a moment, whether it's see, hear, feel, or doing one of those massage points, to bring your nervous system back online, such that when Uncle so-and-so or Auntie whatnot says something that they know perhaps is something you don't agree with, and you want to go immediately, you
Yeah.
actually giving your vagus nerve that tonality and that softening and that workout beforehand, and putting the resources in place so you don't go immediately from the demands exceeding resources into reactivity, but instead you've resourced yourself enough that when a demand comes up, you can go into creativity, which is an upward cycle.
Is this something that you talk about leaders like working on when they report to a leader that maybe doesn't have a good hold of their own vagus nerve? I find that a lot. In fact, I asked a client today, I said, I'm going to need to ask you to do something that I shouldn't ask you to do. Like, it technically, and when I look at structure, it should come top down from you, but it's not going to. And so I need you to take, I need you to take this action. I am imagining that if I learn my own way to self-regulate, I can have impact on others. Is that correct?
It is so correct. If you learn your own way to self-regulate, it's a little bit like you're watching people through a window. You still can hear them, but they're not having that impact on you because you're actually regulated. So the hooks or the reactions that would have gotten you immediately triggered are no longer able to do that. So this is a good thing. In the book, I talk about there are triggers, there's being triggered, and then there's being in a triggered state. So that boss might come and they might say something that has been said before, and it's a really strong trigger for you. If you have done some of the nervous system work, you might see the trigger, but you don't necessarily go get triggered by it. You can go, you know what, that is a really tough comment, and it's actually more about that person or the situation than it is about me. So it's not that the person that manages you or leads you isn't going to throw triggers out. Yes, they are. But you have a choice of whether you pick up the trigger and become triggered. And then, of course, if you go all the way into a triggered state, this is when you're now not really observing what's going on around you. Now the state has you in its grip and it's driving you. You're not driving it anymore. So that's exactly what we're helping people do, is realize, yes, there will still be triggers, but the work you do beforehand helps you recognize what they are. And the resourcing of yourself helps you be ready in the moment to not go from trigger to triggered and then into a state.
Yeah. And I imagine this cuts down on workplace drama. It cuts down on people quitting. It increases productivity. I mean, what are the results on, when leadership can really adapt these strategies?
I love that you asked that. So let me just start out by saying one of my clients right now, we've been working together for a couple of years. And when we first started working together, they had about 9 employee lawsuits on average that were actively going.
Wow.
And now they have none. So just think about that. At any time, there was some level of employee complaint happening because they weren't feeling seen, heard, and appreciated. Now, I
Yeah.
will admit that's one of the things that we put into that organization is how do you as leaders regulate yourself so that you have conversations where people feel seen, heard, and appreciated. There's a whole system behind that. But that is a bottom line thing. They're paying hundreds of thousands of dollars in lawsuits. Their productivity has gone up. Their retention rate has gone up. All of those things because people feel psychologically safe in the environment where they didn't, they cared. They cared before, but the leaders hadn't learned that, and this is in a emergency medical space. And so everybody is in
Yeah.
urgency.
Obviously, they're, yeah.
Lives are on the line. Like there is no way to not be in emergency. But now they are able to regulate. And before they have a conversation with somebody, they take whatever emergency they just came from and they take a moment so that they don't carry that into the conversation. And they regularly have conversations with people dedicated to helping them feel seen, heard, and appreciated. And what happens? Productivity rises and conflict goes down.
That's amazing. I mean, that's amazing. So does it have to start top down?
Well, it would be lovely if it could always
Right.
start top down. Let's be honest, oftentimes the top is part of the problem.
Right.
Like, listen, I spent a lot of time working to get to the top of the heap. You all need to deal with me, right?
Right.
So it doesn't have to start top down. I would always prefer that it did, but it doesn't have to start top down because what happens when you start even in the middle is that the people in the middle build resilience. They build capacity. So instead of being in reaction all the time, they actually build capacity around those triggers to say, I'm not accepting that. They learn how to actually set new boundaries for themselves around what is acceptable or not around them. And I love the definition of boundaries, where you say boundaries are the distance at which I can both love you and love me, right? Like this is the
Yeah.
boundary that we're having. And so when you learn more about strengthening your own nervous system, and this works across all the generations, because there are things that baby boomers dreamed of, like work-life balance, right?
Right.
The Gen Xers desired, but there were 80 million baby boomers eating their lunch. That millennials were raised by their parents to know they could demand, and Gen Z know that they deserve. And
Right.
so when you create this kind of safety and this kind of permission to take care of yourself holistically, what happens is it starts to change the culture of the organization. And from there, sometimes the folks that weren't necessarily interested in it get really interested in what's been happening over here in this department where productivity has risen and the absentees and the call outs have gone down. Like, why is that?
Yeah.
Because people are feeling regulated and safe.
Yeah. And I think that, I find in my own self, I mean, I watch my own behavior, and I just came in from a week on the road, and came home last night, and I got in bed at like 8 o'clock, and my husband said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I don't think if I don't go to bed at 8 o'clock, I'm not going to be a very nice human being tomorrow." I could feel it. And so when I got up today, I'm in a good mood. I have a lot of capacity, even though there's a lot on my plate today. But I also think that I don't have to work as hard when I do that. I mean, I think we've gotten all off on this, um, I don't know, this tangent of it's the amount of hours that we work, and it isn't. It's how productive you are in those hours.
Yes, people, they collapse discipline with capacity.
Yeah.
And you really have to look at what is the capacity of my resources right now. And last night you made a really great choice. You said, I have spent all my resources.
I'm done.
I need to go recharge by going to bed 8 o'clock. I think that's a great time to go to bed. And you might have said, no, I usually stay up till this time and I'm going to work out. Although I'm sure you probably did work out because you're so good at that. But you could have pushed a few more things in there, run some laundry or that kind of thing, like thinking that was good discipline. But it was actually draining the reserves of your capacity. And the next morning when you wake up, you're not ready to go. You are depleted. You're in a depleted state. And it's reasonable to be in a depleted state. So this is why it's so important now that even with like PTO, we have this whole new generational thing around how we manage PTO. And you'll see that millennials and Gen Z more often are managing their well-being with their paid time off. And the flexibility of that is a really important thing, because our Gen Zers, their parents oftentimes said, if you are not feeling good today, not have to be sick, didn't have to be like, kind of thing. If you are not resourced, then let's take this day and rest and get you ready to go back. So they come into the workplace and they know about managing energy and time. And
versus us who are our mother, if we didn't go to school, it was you basically had to be at death.
Oh my God. So, I'm from a large family. I'm one of 19 kids. And if you didn't go to school, you better be on death's door. And if you missed the bus, you had to work on the farm hard all day and you would never miss the bus again. So like you had to be dying to stay home.
Yeah. And the last thing you wanted to do was stay home, right?
Oh my God. I did not want to stay home. Oh, please. Oh, please. Oh, please. I don't want to slop hogs. I do not want to muck out the barn. Please do not stay home.
Make me do that. Well, Anna, it is hard to believe, but we are at the end of this podcast. I always like to end with two questions, and you can answer them in either direction. But as you think about, you mentioned the pace of change, and you are so right. I mean, it's so much faster. Gartner released a report that said, the research firm that said the pace of change has increased 183% in just 4 years, and it's expected to pick up at 33% on top of that year over year. It is coming at us so fast, we can't even breathe. So for people out there listening to the podcast, what is your best advice for them as we look at the coming year and the amount of not only professional change and uncertainty they'll need to deal with, but personal as well? And the second, of course, is how do they get a hold of you? How do they follow your work? How do they find both of your books? Because your work on the generational codes is just really enlightening and groundbreaking, as well as this new one on the vagus nerve.
So I love your question about the speed. The higher tech and the faster we go, the higher connect, and the more we have to connect with others in a life-to-life connection, as well as with ourselves. When there's more high tech, we have to have high connect. If we don't, everything will feel unmanageable and beyond our capacities. And so I'm not talking about taking a mountain retreat or a week at a spa, although please don't let me
That's good.
Please don't let me stop you. But the more you can take micro moments to rest and reset, to give yourself micro signals that it's okay to move out of constant go, 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 the more you'll be ready and refreshed for what is coming out as things go faster and faster and faster. It seems simple, but it is profound.
Could not agree more.
Yeah. And folks can find me online at annaliotta.com, ANNALIOTTA.com. And you're welcome to give me a visit there, an email. I'm on LinkedIn with you at Anna Liotta as well. And I would just love to hear from folks. They can jump on Amazon to get either book, Unlocking Generational Codes, or The Vagus Nerve Reset Decoded.
Yeah, I really recommend. I'd really recommend both of the books. On the surface they don't look like they go together, but they really, really do. And I think the theme of everything that I've talked to you about today is the importance to slow down, listen, and to understand. And I think it's in a world that is moving this fast, the biggest thing that we are missing is the ability to listen. And when you listen, you will figure out the path to become successful, navigate the uncertainty, and get what you need in order to feel successful. So I cannot thank you enough for joining us today. Can't thank you enough for the wisdom of your book. And like I said, I'm about halfway through. I'm excited to finish it. So we'll see you all right back here next week for another episode of Ask for Change. Look in the show notes for everything that Anna talked about today. And remember, when you ask for change, you're going to embrace it into your life and turn all of this uncertainty into your greatest competitive advantage. I'll see you next week.